Hello and welcome everybody. This is International Master Sam Shankland, and today I would like to continue my series on Garry Kasparov, who, as I've said many times, is, in my opinion, the best player ever. I might be somewhat biased because I've had a chance to analyze with him and see just how quickly his mind thinks, and it's pretty fast. So anyhow, I'm going to go to the next match that Kasparov played with Karpov after the last one, which ended somewhat anticlimactically when it was canceled after, I believe, 48 games. The next one commenced, and Kasparov really got started running. He won the first game, and it was definitely a very exciting match the whole way through. But I think in the end, Kasparov really deserved to win. And the game we're going to look at today was Game 16 of their match. And this match was a different format. The last one just had first to 6 wins, and this one said just best out of 24. So this is Game 16 of the match, Karpov against Kasparov. Okay, the game starts. E4, C5, Knight F3, E6, D4, C takes D4, Knight takes D4, Knight C6. Now, if you've been following my series, you should know this position is familiar. We saw Kasparov lose a game in this opening line in the first match, but now we're going to show that he has matured just a little bit. Okay, Knight B5, D6, C4, Knight F6, Knight C3, A6, and this was all played so far. This was all played in the previous game. But here Kasparov came up with his new innovation, which I think is really interesting and is still theoretically relevant today. I don't know if it was actually him or if it were his seconds, but in any case, there's a really cool new idea here. And that was black striking back in the center immediately with D5. So basically he's realized that in the long term he's doomed to a somewhat passive position with a bit less space, and that's not going to be a very pleasant prospect to defend. So this time he's electing to immediately sacrifice a pawn and generate some active play, which is really sort of in his style. So I think it showed that he basically found that it was, at this point, it was best to go back to his old attacking ways than try to play, with a little less space against someone like Karpov. Okay, CD5, ED5, E5. Note that if knight takes D5, there's a million good moves here, but probably knight takes E4 is the simplest. And white, he's kind of in a sorry position because it's very tactical with both knights so far advanced, but I think black is for preference because white doesn't really have a good way to attack this knight on E4. And next move, black's going to play bishop E6. So, yeah, I would definitely prefer to be black here. If white plays like F3, probably can just drop the knight back to F6, and your knight on A3 is a kind of sorry piece. F3 is not a move you'd like to play. And if you play, say, bishop E2 after bishop E6, black's certainly better. So, I don't know, not like knight C3, knight B4, or bishop B4, and so at this point, white might even be lost, but okay, I'm sure he has improvements, but this was still clearly not what white wants. So he takes D5, and now knight B4. So Kasparov is threatening to recapture his pawn. Bishop E2. Probably it's a bit risky to take the pawn right now just because his pieces are a bit underdeveloped. So just bishop C5. Strong move. He doesn't need to rush to take that guy. Cackle, cackle. I'm channeling wrench here. And bishop F3. So now Karpov defends his pawn, and it can be said that he's up a clear pawn. But now we see the real point of Kasparov's plan. Bishop F5. And we're controlling his very nice C2 and D3 squares with the knight and bishop to harass white. And white doesn't really have a good way of dealing with that because his knight on A3 is blocking the potential for his pawn to kick the enemy knight out. And white can't really play knight A B1. It might be nice, but knight C2 is going to lead to a win of material for black. So here we see Kasparov almost playing in sort of Karpov style, or really more would be Kramnik style if you're talking about great players. But he sacrificed the pawn, but in return, he's got a very Karpov-esque bind on the position. There's no real way for white to untangle his pieces. And this is sort of what we saw in the last game we looked at, where he struck back in, I believe it was game 46 of their match. Maybe it was 47, I forget, I lose count. So, bishop g5 from Karpov. And Kasparov just plays rook e8, calmly develops his pieces. So, some crazy variation, rook e1. It's possible I don't know. Rook e1's maybe feasible, but I think after something like queen d6, the rook's going to be sorely missed there. It's also possible to play. Yeah, probably just knight d3 also is very strong. There's too much hanging on f2. So really, if you look here, it's actually very hard for white to develop his pieces in a comfortable way. So, like, knight c4 would be nice to play to maybe swing back to e3, but after bishop d3, white loses material. So it's really annoying to play this position for white, and I think maybe Karpov was realizing at this point things were a little unpleasant. So he plays queen d2. Now b5, very strong move from Kasparov, just restricting the enemy knight on a3. He doesn't do anything too radical just yet, but it's clear what he has on his mind. Okay, so rook a d1. Karpov, this is certainly not a bad move. He's putting his rook behind the path pawn. He may have notions of now moving his knight back to b1 to play a3 because there's no more trapped rook in the corner. And he's developing his pieces, so you can't really blame him for that. Okay, knight d3 from Kasparov, strong move. Threats of b4, f2 always an issue. So Karpov drops his knight back to b1. And there's certainly nothing like devastating just yet, but we're starting to see Kasparov seize the initiative. And that is almost never a good thing, having Kasparov with an initiative. Okay, h6. White would not be well advised to play bishop takes f6. That would just give black the bishop pair and a very powerful dark square bishop. So he drops back to h4. And now Kasparov plays b4, further advancing his position and pushing white's pieces back. Okay, knight a4, and now just bishop d6. And we see this knight, no future. This knight, no future. And really, it's very hard to see how white's just going to deal with his knight on d3. It's just like an octopus dominating his position. I'm saying octopus because he's got, 8 legs, attacking all these different squares, controlling these 2 open files, attacking the b2 pawn, defending his b4 pawn, and in some cases maybe, and of course the f2 pawn, in some cases maybe going back this far, but unlikely. Anyhow, all these squares are very nice from this knight, and yeah, he's just the octopus that's dominating the position. So bishop g3, and now Kasparov came with a really nice move here. Oh, sorry, I lied. Rook c8 is the next move that was really nice. I forgot my notes on this game. Rook c8 is a very natural move, and it certainly is a nice move. It puts a rook on an open file, but one that white can't contest. Realize that these 2 open files here are completely under black's control because white cannot contest them. Why can white not contest them? Well, this goes back. King Octopus on d3 is controlling both the e1 and c1 squares, so white can't put his rooks on those squares, or else he'd lose material. Okay, b3. White may have notions of removing the octopus with knight to b2. So now, what should black play? It's a very difficult question, and I think Kasparov found a really nasty move. All right, boys and girls, if you haven't stopped your videos yet, you probably should, because I'm about to go on. Black played g5. Now, this move is strong for a wide variety of reasons, but the most important one is just that now the f4 square is under black's control. So if knight b2, black can just play knight f4. And it's a little bit awkward for white to find a good move now. Another idea is that g4 is going to come into play, and it's going to be very handy. So this would be... I think this would be quite nice for black after knight f4. I don't really see a good move for white in this position, and that's usually a bad sign if you don't have any good moves. So, yeah, this is less than pleasant. Instead, Karpov took on d6. Kasparov obviously recaptures, and g4 is coming, and it's going to be very hard for white to deal with. So he plays g3, hoping to give his pieces some more room. And now we really see Kasparov starts to bring the hammer down and make some pain be felt. So the first thing he does, I think, is very instructive. He could make a simple move, knight takes d5, and remain a pawn, equalize material. And while equalizing material, he's also maintained his positional dominance. But Kasparov had bigger notions on his mind. He played the move knight to d7, preparing to come to e5. And I think this is a very nasty move because this d5 pawn, really, white would actually rather not have the pawn because it's just restricting his bishop so much. And it's never going to be a threat while black's got the knight on d3 plugging the d file and the queen on d6 blockading the pawn. So, and after bishop g2, Kasparov plays queen f6. And he's very methodical, sort of Karpov style, again, which is really surprising for a player like Kasparov. But here, his plan, he's got a few ideas of this move. First of all is avoiding any knight b2 business. And next, I think he wants to put his queen on d4 and then knight on e5. And it's an extremely active position for black, and white's very hard-pressed to find any kind of counterplay. a3, looking for counterplay. Well, your opponent played a3. What do you play now? You have 3 seconds to find the answer. 3, 2, 1. If you don't have it, you should quit chess. a5. So, just maintaining the tension and holding back any idea of developing the b1 knight to a convenient square. Trade skis, and now queen a2. So I guess white got the a2 square for his queen, although I don't think that's really anything to brag about. The queen is kind of useless there. But, you know, hey, you have to give Karpov some credit. He's got to find something to do, but there's really no other idea. I guess his plan with this move is probably to play knight d2 and develop his knight that way, but Kasparov just plays bishop g6, very calm. And I like this move because now knight d2 just fails to rook e2 with impending disaster on the f2 square. Not that if black had put some other weighted move after rook e2, there's probably bishop f3, and it's going to be a little bit harder for black to break through. In fact, he probably has to retreat. But after this strong move, bishop g6, really Kasparov is playing prophylactically again, because if white defends his, if white tries to bring his knight out after rook e2, he's going to have a very hard time defending all his coconuts. Like, rook takes f2 is a big problem, and there's not really a good way of dealing with it. Why did I say coconuts? I'm channeling Jesse Cry. He does videos elsewhere. So d6, I guess, you know, it shows Karpov really doesn't want this pawn. He's willing to just give it up for nothing. But Kasparov has no interest in taking it. He plays g4, you know, just further restricting white's pieces. And now queen back to d2. I suppose he wants to attack h6, but other than that, I really see no reason for this move. That being said, it's kind of a thankless task to try to defend this position or offer better suggestions. All right, king g7 again, very simple. And now Karpov plays f3. He's sick of waiting, and that's his demise. Opening up this diagonal to the king gave Kasparov the avenue he needed to finish the game off. So first Kasparov just takes d6 and sort of asks Karpov what he wants to do. Karpov decides to take on g4 to open up his pieces somewhat, but now we see check, knight f6, and now with knight he takes g4, knight e4, you've got a million threats showing up, and this position is suddenly hopeless. Knight is going to inevitably land on f2, and there's going to be a lot of problems for white. So he tries rook f4, sort of a desperate bid, I think, for counterplay of some way. Knight e4, obviously white can't take it because of bishop e4 and some pending checkmate in the next few moves. So queen takes d3, but now knight f2 check, and it's really getting ugly. So king g1 would probably be the best move, but it's still just completely hopeless. Probably just queen takes d3 is best, and after rook d3, knight d3. And black's up in exchange, and white still has all the same positional problems we had before, plus black rooks showing up on, you know, the second or first rank. So this would be pretty hopeless, but maybe it was white's best try. He took the knight instead, and now black took the lady, and you know, queens are pretty good pieces. So rook f d2, and then queen e3. This was really nasty the way this game finished. Rook takes d3. And there's a ton of ways black can win here. He can play queen takes d3, rook takes d3, check on e1, take the bishop, take the knight, and black's got a pretty trivially won endgame. But Kasparov is a little more sick in the head than that. He's got nasty plans for Karpov. He plays move rook c1 here, just nasty. Idea being if rook takes e3, of course, then check, and after bishop f1 we take here. Black now has 2 rooks for 3 pieces, which normally would not be such a big deal, but the point is he's getting another piece by force, and that certainly will be enough to end the game. There's no way that white's going to save both of these. In fact, what am I even thinking? Why can't black just take on b1 right away? Don't listen to Sam, he's silly. So that would have been just completely devastating, of course. So Karpov tries to defend himself with knight b2, but this doesn't work out too well. Kasparov plays queen f2, another good move. Temporarily offering the rook, but it can't be taken because of rook e1 check, followed by mate. So Karpov plays knight d2, trying to use the f1 square. Takes, knight d1, rook e1 check, and well, resign. So that would be pretty nasty finish to the game. So I think a very nice play like Kasparov, and it really showed how he matured as a player. Creating an initiative and attacking, but first playing positionally and really playing prophylactically to prevent all of White's play, and sort of combining his own style with Karpov's. And this really was a masterpiece of one of the greatest player of all time. So until next time, this is Sam Shanklin signing off.